Hi, this is Ruth Brunner, and I have the pleasure today of interviewing Marge Straube. It's August 12th, 2020. We're out here on May Drive, and there's a nice windstorm outside, so if you hear that, you'll know. And Marge, would you tell us your age, just basically introduce yourself to the camera for the Windsor Severance Historical Society oral history interviews.
Okay, I'm Marge Straube. I'm 83, and I was born in Windsor, Colorado, in Dr. Gromley's Hospital on 5th Street, across from the telephone company. And Dr. Sabin, a longtime doctor in Windsor, was the attending physician. And my dad worked with his dad for a while on farms around here, and then he was hired by a lady named Mrs. Tingley, a widowed lady who had a farm. So he farmed for Mrs. Tingley, which was east of Windsor. And when she sold the farm to Henry Hergert, then we moved to Alt. And he farmed for another gal, Mrs. Pattybone, another widowed lady up there, so we were farming. And that's where I started school, up in Alt.
Okay.
And that was interesting because it was during the time we were living there that Japan did the bombing
Of Pearl Harbor.
of Pearl Harbor, right? And there were a lot of Japanese truck farmers around Alt up at that time. And communication is not like it was today, but if there was a plane in the sky, everybody got really uptight. And they had no idea of the allegiance that these Japanese farmers might have. So my dad was an air raid warden. And when he heard the siren go off, what that meant is he'd jump in his truck and go to all the farmers on his list and say, you got to turn off your yard light and your house lights. You know, we don't want any. And so he'd do that. And so Mother would put my sister Roberta and myself under the dining room table, throw over the big quilts on it, and give us Dad's flashlight for when he irrigated. And so underneath there we could play paper dolls or color. But once in a while, one time we really got bored. Mother didn't know what to do with us, so she brought out something. And it was a new box of Tinker Toys she had bought that she was going to save and give us for Christmas. But she gave it to us under the table, so we'd be happy. So he farmed up there. And not only did he farm, but he raised cattle and would take them to the market in Denver quite often, you know, and stuff.
Down 85.
Yeah. And then I never asked him, and I can't believe I didn't. Here he had farmed, and he was a good farmer. And and the cattle was a good time because, you know, they needed food and meat for the soldiers, you know. So what to do, you know? And then all of a sudden, he bought 2 restaurants in Eaton. Ducky's Inn and the Yellow Front Cafe. What, you know? And I'm like, I never asked him, Dad, what in the heck possessed you? You know, after being such a good farmer all those years. And so we moved to Eaton. And it was, like I said, during the war, and there was not a house for rent or anything. Nobody was building anything. Everything went to the war, you know. And so there was a big room in back of the restaurant, and so, well, we moved back in there, and of course the kitchen was there, you know, in the restaurant, because it was a place where a lot of retired men you would come for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's what they served. They would serve it, you know, like you would at your home. Meat, potatoes, vegetable, dessert.
Did the men just live in boarding houses?
Well,
instead of
no, they
houses?
lived around there, old widowed men,
Widowed
you know,
men.
yeah. And so it was quite a lucrative that way. There were quite a few of them, and they had been doing it, and they kept on doing it.
So what moved you to Windsor then?
Well, okay. So here we are, and my little sister Sandy was probably 2 or 3, and she would come out from, you know, the big room in the back, and those little, the men, oh, Sandy, come here, and they'd pick her up and, you know, talk to her and this, that, and the other. And I can remember my mother telling my dad, Alec, if you don't find me a place to live, I cannot stand all these men picking up Sandy all the time, you know. She said, I just can't stand it anymore. Now, my sister Roberta, who was just starting junior high, she wasn't going to go to school in Eton either. So she stayed with Aunt Irma and Uncle Chester, who ran the Yellow Front Cafe, which was just a little shop for sandwiches, you know, not the restaurant, in Eton.
In Eton, okay.
You know, just down the road. And so we had come to Windsor to visit my mom's family, Fritzlers, that lived on First and Main, you know, and got to talking. And Grandpa Fritzler said, well, you know, there's a house up on Elm Street in Windsor that's going to auction. Mrs. Winter owned it. And so they went up there, and Dad auctioned and got the house. So we moved out from Eton and that restaurant and moved there. And during that time, then he also bought the Kersey Inn.
Oh.
So then we were at the Kersey Inn. So heavens forbid. And
so you want to show a picture of the family there? Oh.
No. Yeah. Here's a picture of my dad when he came to this country. And here he is buying the Kersey Inn.
Now, how many years later?
Yeah. So we got back, that's how I got back to Windsor.
Okay.
So I started in Windsor, ended up in Eton and Alt, and then back to Windsor. And I was in Windsor till I graduated in 1955. But anyway, yeah, that's my dad when he was...
And that picture you were saying was taken where?
That was taken in Russia.
In Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody on there that other people might know or be curious of the names of?
Well, that's John Bruner of John Bruner and Company on Main Street.
Okay.
That was... He came over really early, 18. He was only about 18 when he came over to America. And then Grandpa came in 1911. And I don't know when Jacob came. But anyway, yeah, it was...
And Jacob was the father of Henry Bruner, and...
I
I
don't...
don't know how... Okay.
Yeah, Jacob.
Yeah. Now show me the citizenship paper. I think that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the story on that?
Well, Dad was never really a citizen, and this is what... He became a citizen finally at July 40th. '65th.
Oh, 1965. And he's 33 years old then? Is that what it says, or what? No, what, how... But, so, and that's how he got his citizenship paper, and did all those things before, so...
Yeah, and all those things before, yes.
Yeah. Now, while we're there too, I want you to tell me about the framed document that's there from German. It's from Russia. It's the land
Well-
certificate?
Yes. This is a certificate of 1919, when after the first war that was there was won, Germany had to make reparations to the people who had land. And that is what this is about.
Okay.
Who and what and how much they were entitled to in 1919. So that's fun.
So you,
But-
then you said you lived in Windsor, graduated from Windsor,
Yes.
but you did not marry a Windsorite.
No, I married this guy from Wisconsin who I met, like I said, up in Estes Park. And we both started teaching in Mountain View, Wyoming. We taught there for a few years, and one of your mayors, Christy Melendez, was born there.
Oh, your daughter?
Yes, my daughter. And then we wanted to get a little closer to Windsor and my folks, because it was quite a drive to Mountain View, Wyoming, because it was close to the Utah border. We used to go shopping, you know, in Utah there. But we ended up then going to Sterling. And there was a math and physics teacher job open, and Rich got it. And I couldn't teach because I was pregnant with Robin, our second daughter, and didn't teach the first year. But then I did apply, and I got the next year. And it was kind of tricky with the two little girls, but we talked to someone, and we found the nicest lady who would come to our house. She had a clean dress and apron on every day, and she would keep Christy and Robin, and I went back to work. And so both of us were teaching there, and he always applied for grants, you know, and he was a serviceman, so he got, you know, VA benefits. And he got a grant to go to the University of Michigan for a year.
Oh, to study.
So then we went to Michigan for a year. And from there, he got a job at St. Cloud, Minnesota University. And we were there for a number of years. And that's where our sons, Jonathan and Timothy, were born. Now, Robin works for Chevron. She visits all the Chevron offices, wherever they are, and checks the office and makes sure that everything was something that will connect to the main office, like leases, you know, when you're leasing land and payments and everything. That was her job. And then our oldest son, Jonathan, works for Colorado A&M.
Oh, he does, and he worked with NASA too. Oh, not Jonathan,
that's
Timothy.
our other.
Yeah, okay.
Son Jonathan works for CSU in the Environmental and Ecology Lab.
Okay.
He is their computer people. He keeps their computers and everything up in that place. And then our youngest son, Timothy, is got up to NASA after he got his doctorate degree from CU,
Okay.
and he's been there ever since. So I'm very proud of my kids.
Rightly so.
I think I don't feel bad about taking Social Security one bit, because I know my kids are paying it right now. So anyway, we ended up back in Windsor when Rich was up at St. Cloud State University. We were good friends with the president up there. And he said, you know, Rich, he said there's a lot of politics that goes in and when you're teaching in college. You got your master's, you know, if you got your doctorate, I think you would be really ready to go. So Rich checked in. Well, he had been at UNC in Greeley, so he applied and was accepted to work on his doctorate there. So we came back to Windsor, and he started working on his doctorate, and his advisor and he did not see eye to eye, because Richard had just begun to see laser and computers coming into, and he wanted to do his doctorate on how this would affect industrial arts and the teaching of. And Dr. Jeldon had something else in mind. He wanted him to contact people that had gotten a degree in industrial arts from UNC and which classes they thought had helped them the most in this. Mm-hmm. And Rich didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So he did everything, but he said, I don't want to do that. You know, I don't have any interest. So we're here in Colorado, and we were living.
What year was this, would you say?
This was 73.
Okay, sure.
72, 73.
And that's kind of computers and lasers.
They were just beginning to come
getting
in.
into the industry more.
And so we were living up at Felty's. They had a farmhouse, a labor house. So we lived up there while he was going to school, you know, getting all that. And one day he came home and he said, I just bought an acre up on a drive that's called May. He said, because when he grew up, he attended several different schools. His father was a minister, you know, so, and he always had a feeling, always knew that the house was not theirs ever. It always belonged to the church, you know, and so he said, I've found us an acre. I'm going to draw us up plans for a house that's going to be for us. And so he did.
And that's where you still live today.
And that's where I still live today. In fact, he put the first roof on the house. And he and I did all the cedar siding and yeah.
And May Drive, was this subdivision started by
Phil
Kennedy? Okay.
Phil and Leota Kennedy.
Who had the Kennedy car dealership right on
Chevy.
4th? Chevy, okay. On 4th and kind of the alley behind Main.
And the new one that was built then.
Oh, where the Dutch Brothers Coffee, not Dutch Brothers, but
yeah,
out
there, right.
Okay. So.
Right. And then May, who had the filling station in Severance, Rita May.
Okay.
You know,
they're all related.
And yeah, that was her sister. Leota and Rita were sisters.
So you've seen a lot of changes
Yes.
in Windsor since 1973 when you moved back here.
Well, we moved back, and so I applied for a job, and I got it teaching 6th grade at the now City Hall under Mr. Ross and Leota Kennedy. Right across the street, she taught Kenny Kisselman,
Okay.
you know, and those people were
Park School on 3rd and Walnut, right?
We were on the 2nd floor, right? And so then Lydia Hedgener got a hold of me, and she was with the Windsor Severance, or the Windsor Historical Society. And she said, Marge, when we open in the summer, would you be willing to spend one day a week at the old town hall and, you know, go through it and help explain things to people and watch out so that nothing happens, you know, when it's open. And it was open, what, Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays, I think. So that's how I got started in the Windsor Severance Historical
Yes.
Society.
Because you said that when you were at, you can show them that picture, you're at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Not Texas, excuse me, CSU when it was A&M. You were a history major, right?
Right.
And then that finally, how many years later, you able to use that and help Windsor preserve its history?
Yes. And while there, I had a good friend that I graduated with, Ron Greenwald.
Oh, okay, yes.
And then Ron became the president of the American Historical Society of Germans from Russia.
Oh, okay.
And of course, Marge, I need a program director, and you're going to be it. Ron. So I did, and I did that job for, 16 years.
Wow.
You've
given back to your community in
provided
lots of ways.
the program for that club too. But so that got me involved in Windsor Severance Historical Society.
Didn't you also work on the interviews that, now I'm
Oh,
doing
yeah.
YouTube interviews. You guys started up with, you want to hold up that little article? It was you and Sue Buxman and
Right.
You did them on VHS tapes and then
Yes.
to DVDs, and now we're using
Yes.
YouTube
Everything.
and websites, so
In
you can
fact,
still see those at the library if you want
I've
to check
still
them
got
out.
that machine downstairs that will take the cartridge from
Yeah.
the video camera and turn it into a DVD. Yeah.
So technology
My husband
has changed.
had to do that. I couldn't have done it, but and Sue tried. She and her husband, she said, Marge, we don't know how this works. But anyway,
I can
but that's
relate.
what we did,
Yeah.
And so we did a lot, and there were a lot of good ones. Helen Caston, the Caston family,
Leona Bernhardt and Vic.
Leona Bernhardt, yes, and Maury, and there's a lot of fun little history lessons, and little things all along the way. I remember when the swimming pool used to be back there by the lake.
Yeah.
That was,
And by the church and the depot.
yeah. And how all the bells would ring when someone died, and you knew how old they were because it would ring that many times, especially from St. John's Church and the evangelical one there on the corner. And somehow the Methodist Church had a very active young people's group, and a lot of the kids from around here ended up doing their things with that, but there was no drugs and very little drinking at all, when you were growing up in Windsor. In fact, Mr. McCall, he probably
He was
would
the
have known.
principal. He would have known.
He would have known in a minute. He was very, and he wasn't mean about it. You just knew, that
Somebody
Mr.
was
McCall.
watching and making sure you made
making
good
sure
choices.
that everybody knew what was appropriate and what wasn't. And then his wife taught 9th grade English, and so they were a long time. They never had any children, but they didn't live far from us on Elm Street, the McCalls.
First and Elm, second, third, what cross street was your house?
Okay, by 4th,
Uh-huh.
and they lived on 4th.
Okay.
And Mrs. McCall and my sister Roberta were very close, and before you knew it, Roberta was cleaning their house. So she'd go to Mrs. McCall's, and she would clean on a Saturday or something. But invariably I would get a call. Marge, Grubby's out. They had a little black dog named Grubby that was in the house. And she hated to clean house with him because there was She said, it just seems like I'm cleaning up the hair, and there he is, and it's all. She said, so I want to get it clean, and she'd kind of let him,
Go outside.
you know, and he would find a way out of that gate. So then I'd have to jump on my bike and go looking for Grubby. But I used my bike a lot because after my dad had had the restaurants and eaten and sold them, and then he had the Kersey Inn, then he bought the Hofbrau in Fort Collins.
Oh.
And that was just outside the city limits because the town of Fort Collins was a dry town.
What year was this?
Would have been, probably 50,
Yeah, okay.
54 or 52. And so he brought the Hofbrau. And we only had one car back then. Not too many people had, two cars. So he would take the car. So it was up to me to pay the bills and get little groceries, that Mom wanted every now and again until she could get in the car and do it. And I remember Saturday morning, it was always I would go up to, there was a bakery on Main Street, and go up and get something for us after we cleaned house and did that, we always got a treat. But yeah, me and my bike with the basket.
I can relate. I can relate.
I would go up and do it. And the Windsor Mercantile then was owned by the Fry boys, an English family that lived in Windsor. And my Aunt Lydia, my dad's sister, married John Fry.
Okay.
And everybody says that was the first German from Russia Englishman marriage.
What year was that? Oh.
I can't remember, but it was
that was
before, But anyway, so I go up, and the Windsor Mercantile was very different.
It's where Manuel's is now, right?
Right, but it was one room was the grocery store. And then there was an archway, and you would go in, and it was a clothing store. And then you would go out the door to an area, a little alleyway there, and they sold machines. I said, that's the first Walmart.
Yeah.
Because they sold
everything.
They sold everything. But you didn't have grocery baskets to put your grocery in. What you would do is you would tell Bill Lind, Bill, I need a can of pumpkin up on that shelf up there. And there was a little ladder that ran on a track, and he'd take the ladder and hand it to you, and you'd put it at the cash register and then pick up anything else, and he'd get it all for you, and you would then pay for it. But I just signed my name because Dad had a checking account. We had an account.
You could do that.
With, and they did that. And the Windsor Mercantile helped a lot of the German from Russia families. During the winter they would charge, and then after the sugar beets came out and they got paid, then they would go in and pay their bill.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
My Aunt Lydia sold everything from girdles to dresses to headscarves, hankies, and evening in Paris perfume.
So which one is she in the picture, Aunt Lydia?
Aunt Lydia would be this one.
Wow.
No, this one.
This one right there.
And this was Aunt Molly. Yeah.
Look at
She
that.
came over, yep. But
so
she was very good in that she would have to go to Denver and buy the stuff for they sold irrigation boots, and men jackets and coveralls and those kinds of things. And then the farm machinery, and then
was the farm machinery in that little lot that's still open between the end of where that staircase is going up, and then there's a barber shop or something a little before the bistro.
You're right.
So,
Yeah.
wow. A Walmart right here in Windsor.
Well, and then back by the railroad track there was a building. And they would buy 1 carload of coal every winter. And they would distribute the coal. You needed coal for the winter. Remember, everybody had a coal stove. Because that's the way you heated and cooked. And you would call and they would come. And they had a kind of a sliding shovel that they would put in your window and the coal would come on in. That's why everybody had to have an alley.
Yeah.
Because most people had chickens, and they'd have a little chicken fence and chicken coop, and then they had to have a coal shed, and then they had to have ash pit, where you would take the ashes out from your coal. That had to be taken out. And you could also burn paper stuff up in then your ash pit.
Yeah. Was the ash good for the soil, or what would you do with it?
Not really. You
So
just stored it yeah.
So
And I don't know where they actually took it when the ash pit got full.
Yeah.
But everybody had that.
Yeah. And that's why the lots were so deep.
Yes.
You know, in the old part of town.
You're
Yeah,
right.
they had, because you had that, and sometimes a cow or even your horse, if that was your.
So anyway. But anyway, so growing up in Windsor with my high school class, which was 39 of us, I can't say we really had a lot of, we'd have what would get-togethers, you know. Somebody would be doing something and you'd just kind of hang out. We did maybe steal a few watermelons or apples, you know, stuff like that. That was kind of, but other than that, yep.
You had fun. So you were talking, I'm very curious about Park School when you were there, because you said you taught 6th grade. When did 6th grade move up to what, you know, the middle school, or what was the junior high, and what precipitated that?
I don't know what precipitated that, but it happened.
Was it the opening of the new high school that we
think
have
so,
now, that
right.
we presently have in 75?
5 probably, right. And so, like I said, you know, the 6th grade was out, so there was one person too many, and I was the last person hired
Right, so you got to
by
start.
Ernie Ross.
Yeah.
So that, you know, but anyway, and Mr. Tozier, you know, was very instrumental in Windsor's history, too.
Yeah, when was the school named after him? It was while he was alive and
Yes,
teaching as superintendent?
Right. He was superintendent for many years, and he was helpful in getting the VFW set up, you know.
Oh,
The
do you remember
American
do you
Legion.
remember when the American Legion was moved in and brought in to on Ash Street in
yeah,
Windsor?
it was after the war. They bought one of the camps.
Officers